And welcome to another edition of Front Office Takeover, a series where we take on the front office of a current NFL franchise and take them through a hypothetical offseason. This week, we are heading over to Chicago to take on the Chicago Bears. They recently fired their general manager, Ryan Pace, as well as their head coach, Matt Nagy, and they're looking to turn the page onto next season. They've got a fantastic defense set up. They've got some good young building blocks on offense with Justin Fields, David Montgomery, Cole Kmet, and Darnell Mooney. And we're really looking to take this on to make sure that Chicago puts their best foot forward in 2022 and beyond. And without further ado, here we go. So first up on the docket, we mentioned that they are looking for a head coach as Matt Nagy has been let go. So knowing what division they're in, Chicago needs to get back to the old black and blue style of NFC North football. And what better way to do that with this talented group on defense and to bring in a guy who's been innovative everywhere he's gone from the defensive side of things with Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator from Tampa Bay. Obviously, he's coming off of a Super Bowl last year. Tampa Bay is making another run this year for another Super Bowl. Todd Bowles is one of the most talked about coaches in the league that currently does not have a job. So what we are going to do is look at Todd as being the guy we want to target to come in and take on that defense and really ensure that we are putting our best foot forward going. So as we start this offseason, we are looking at $36 million in projected cap space with the current roster. So again, a little bit of wiggle room, but we also could be using a little bit more in order to go and do what we need to do in regards to resigns and free agency and the draft. So if we go and start off the whole process by restructuring contracts, we've got a few guys who are veterans. They're on long-term deals. This is how we're really going to save a lot of cap space. So again, we're making today's problem tomorrow's problem, but as a new front office administration takes over, these are the types of things you need to do. So basically you see Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn, Eddie Jackson, Cody Whitehair, Eddie Goldman, and Mario Edwards, all kind of, nearing that phase of their career where they're in no man's land. They're all in their late 20s, early 30s, really looking to, again, capture that glory of winning a Super Bowl. I think that all of them would be open to taking some type of agreement in regards to restructuring their contracts. If that happens, we're looking at saving a projected $31.4 million. So again, let's us go into the offseason with a new projected cap space of $67.46 million. Because we restructured so many contracts, we really don't have anything to release at this point that will really make any impact on our cap. Most of the players who would be eligible for releasing would actually cost us more against the cap and dead cap money. So we'll stay away from that for the time being. From a re-signing perspective, here's a list of everybody that we want to bring back on a multi-year or one-year contract. So really the highlighted players there are James Daniels, the fantastic offensive guard, Jermaine Ifedi, who is a pretty decent starter at right tackle for them, Jakeem Grant, who came out of nowhere and really gave them a spark on offense, but is a good return guy, good slot receiver, can use him on jet sweeps. Again, an innovative offensive coordinator can utilize his skill set. Christian Jones, want to bring him back. He was a key cog in that defense. Alec Ogletree, same thing. Sam Mustipher came out of nowhere, was really a really solid starter at the center position at the second half of the season. And then we look at one of our starting corners, Tease Tabor. Again, restricted free agent, so we're going to look to re-up him and bring him back so that way our defense is set. All in all, after all these resignings, we're looking at still having $28 million to go into free agency to bring in some players that we need to make our team better. Before we do that, again, you always have to explore trades. What do you have of value? What are people going to be looking for? So if you're looking at the Chicago roster, there's really only one name that stands out that could be moved and not have to, again, incur that huge dead cap penalty, and you would actually get a decent return. So basically with the Justin Fields trade, Chicago's without a first and a fourth round pick this year, leaving them in a very disadvantageous position because obviously when you're trying to rebuild, you need that draft capital in order to do that, to bring in more young talent. So right now, you got Danny Trevathan offering him up to the Baltimore Ravens, who would probably be looking to, solidify that linebacker position based on this past season. And, in return, again, we're not going to be getting, first, second, round picks for Danny Trevathan. He's in his 30s. So we're going to be looking at, again, bringing in a high upside receiver with James Proche. Again, not really in the plans for them in regards to a top 3 or 4 receiver. So we can definitely pry him off their hands. And then again, a modest return in regards to draft picks. So you're looking at a 2022 third round pick, which is Baltimore's own, and a 2022 fourth round pick, which Baltimore has from Arizona. So I think if we were to offer that, we'd be able to get that deal done. And then we'd also be incurring a $4 million dead cap hit on that. So again, you kind of take the win with the loss there. But at the end of the day, we're getting better. We're getting a young receiver who has a lot of upside, and we're getting more draft capital in order for us to go. So after this move, now we're looking at a projected $23.9 million for free agency. As we go into free agency, we're looking at a few names here. Again, we're not going to go and break the bank because you don't have a lot of money to go and do so, but these are just key positions that we need to focus on. Justin Fields took way too many hits in his first year. If you want to build, something going forward with him, you need to be able to protect him. So again, bringing in a guy like an Eric Fisher, who's a veteran, who again, he's not going to light the world on fire with his skill set, but he'll be steady over there and provide a calming presence for Justin Fields. James Washington, again, low value, high upside receiver out of Pittsburgh. You can bring him in to compete for snaps. Ryan Toilolo, he's a fantastic blocking tight end out of New York. Again, you could have him for cheap, roll him out there as a second or third tight end, not really asked to do a whole lot. DJ Jones, fantastic defensive tackle out of San Francisco, but again, probably going to be commanding a little bit more money than San Fran is going to be willing to invest. So we could probably pry him away with the allure of having a starting position with us. And again, dipping into the San Francisco free agent pool, we got Jaquiski Tart, the free safety. So again, really solidifying our secondary back there. As far as the draft goes, I mentioned earlier that we don't have a first or a fourth round pick from the Justin Fields trade. So with the trade with Baltimore, we were able to incur a third and a fourth round pick incorporated into our draft class. So with the picks, based on current projections of where these players are slated to go, here's what we're looking at. George Pickens, I think, would really be a high upside receiver that could eventually be our number 1 or 1A with Darnell Mooney on the offensive side. He's got a little bit of a rapport with Justin Fields, being a Georgia guy. That's where Justin Fields is from. That's where he started his college career. So you could really have that instant rapport right out of the gate. And again, he'd be a first round pick if he played this whole season. Unfortunately, with an injury, that might move him down draft boards, but at this point, it's worth a shot. Number 71, so our first third round pick, we're looking at Kobe Bryant, the cornerback out of Cincinnati. Got overshadowed a little bit by his colleague Ahmad Gardner. So again, Kobe Bryant's really one of those underrated, hard-nosed, great tackling corners that you can bring in to throw into that secondary that is building a lot around youth. Again, mentioned before, we need to protect Justin Fields. So we've got one of his old offensive tackles from Ohio State, Thayer Munford. Guy's a 3-year starter. Again, playing on a team like Ohio State, he's going to be well coached. He's going to come in and compete for snaps right out of the gate and really give us that toughness that we're looking for. With 124, so the pick obtained from the Baltimore trade as well, we're looking at, again, filling that Danny Trevathan spot that we obviously have missed with that trade to Baltimore. So now we're looking at cashing that in with a Jack Sanborn out of Wisconsin. So Jack Sanborn, fantastic middle linebacker, blood and guts guy, blue collar. You can pop him in as a special teamer right out of the gate, and he'll compete for snaps as well and take over that position once our linebackers move on due to age. 146, Marquise Hayes. Again, this is a guy who's falling down draft boards, but at the end of the day, he's really somebody that we can pop in there and compete. So, he may start in year 1, he may take 2 or 3 years to develop, but we can afford to have that with, again, the pedigree coming from Oklahoma, big body. He can play multiple positions. Number 148, defensive tackle, Chris Hinton out of Michigan. Again, big body. You can toss in that defensive line. He can really work well with the existing defensive tackles and the ends that we have. I think that'll be a great value pick. And then rounding out our picks at 185, Jalen Green, a corner out of Mississippi State. Big body, great special teams player, I think can compete for a slot corner position. So again, you want to fill these positions late in the draft that can really kind of take over long-term. So after all that, here's what we're looking at in regards to our Chicago Bears 2022 depth chart. So again, you don't have a lot of draft capital. You don't know really who you are in regards to an identity as a team with aging veterans, with young players. So you really have to make those decisions on how are we going to get better with not having a lot of assets. And I think we're able to do that. Our linebackers are solid. Our DBs are young, but we get a guy like Jaquiski Tartan there to come in and lead them as a veteran. And then again, you look at the defensive line, you're really not going to get too much better than that as regards to a whole unit. So on the offensive side, obviously it's a work in progress, but now you've got some young bodies who are hungry. We've upgraded our receiver position with Proche, Washington, and Pickens to throw in with Darnell Mooney. I think, having that along with Jakeem Grant really gives us the diversity that we need from an entire receiving core. And then again, across the offensive line, you're bringing back four of your five starters, which is great. The consistency is key. Tevin Jenkins isn't ready to play left tackle yet. So I say we slide him back over to the right side where he played in college. We let Eric Fisher take over the left tackle position with Thayer Munford to be his understudy. And then I think we're good long-term there because you look at the age, for most of our guys, we're in a good spot. Then obviously in the backfield, very deep backfield with Montgomery, Herbert, Tariq Cohen coming back off of injury, and Ryan Null. And then again, your quarterbacks are pretty much looking the same minus Andy Dalton that you had the year before. So I think that Chicago would be taking a good step forward here. You get a good defensive mind in as a coach with Todd Bowles, really, bring that defense to the next level. That can be your bread and butter. And then you can slowly work your offense towards getting to that point of winning a championship. So that's it for this week's edition of Front Office Takeover. Please let us know how we did in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe.